We're starting the stream. 7-second delay.
Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Why are you telling us this?
Well, I didn't tell you anything. That was just a little opening liner. Tony Caravan with you.
The only station that matters.
And it's the beginning of another show. A friend of mine told me that this echo was bothering him and someone else on TV. Now what I did was, I don't know if you noticed, but I upped the treble a little bit. My voice was deeper before, which was probably helping me do my Johnny Cash renditions. I hurt myself today. Yeah, see, it's a little bit too high. Now, it's possible to reduce the echo slightly. And I only do this because it's a friend of mine, but I really spent literally a lot of money and time trying to get the boss sound. So I'm lowering the echo just slightly. Alright? But I'm not going to eliminate it. I'm sorry, my good friend Trey. Buy yourself some more expensive equipment, my friend. Anyway, I'm also toying around. He also turned me on to Adam Curry's podcasting operation, which I've kind of basically got set up with the basic, AREL code, and if you know what I'm talking about, podcasting stuff. But I haven't really, and I set up an account. But I don't do the podcasting thing. I haven't done the podcasting thing. I'm more of this. This has been my thing for about 25 years or more. I guess I was podcasting before there was a thing called a iPod. I used to podcast. I used to webcast. That's why it says Worldwide Webcast on my thing. I used to do that back in the 90s. And we used to use Real Audio, which no longer is available, for those of you who remember that. So in any event, yes, we still have kind of the big sound. Let me see here. See, the problem with turning up that was fun. That's what happens when you start. That's better. So it must be the wire connected into this thing that's causing that problem all along. I didn't know that. Yeah, there we go. How's that? A little bit better? See, we're more of, there's no echo whatsoever right now. Now I'm trying to just bring up to a little bit of a bigger sound without an echo. Let's see. How's that? You got that? I was trying to create the big sound of the boss jocks, as opposed to this, which I know is bothering you. Hey, out there. Hey, out there. Hey, out there. Hey, out there. Just a little bit. And I guess I could bring the tone down a little bit more then. Okay? All right. So, I was trying to have a semi-serious show today. It's hotter than hell in here, and we may experience some problems. I had the air conditioner on yesterday, and I may have to turn it on again today. So the question is, do I do that now, or do I wait until I get a synchronous problem? All that said,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
now I had, in the rush to do this, I have forgotten to update my stats and information regarding this website, today's webcast. And I'm frozen. Page unresponsive. Wait. Okay. Yeah, this is not cool. I'm trying to edit the title of this show. It's not letting me edit. It's not letting me edit. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug turn the air conditioner on, and I'll be right back and see if that helps. Now it sounds like we're in an airplane, and we'll see if this does anything. This is why I'm trying to move off of YouTube, because this interface has gone bonkers. Let's see. I'm getting 0 response from my computer right now. Settings have finally opened. Title required. Alright. I'm getting a CPU usage of over 35%, and I literally have no applications open except the browser. All right. Today is the 1st of July in the calendar year 2021, and today's show is going to deal with amazing stories about the before people. And I'm going to keep up my description, which is this way to the beach. Just an ordinary guy who has lived an extraordinary life and has stories to tell. This is an adventure for your mind. Each show is enlightening in at least one small way. That said, it is force-ably and the most unpopular vlog on the internet. Kind of makes you wonder. Save. I'm receiving an error from YouTube. Is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. And there's a pictures of me that you are probably seeing that makes me look like a frickin' beached whale. And as much as I do suffer from vanity, and I have been losing weight, the fact is those images are simply not true. I'm not really that big. Frickin', that's another reason I want to get off of YouTube. Anyway, do you notice how I was able to disconnect and just walk away without having to take all this, the regalia off? I said I'd do it yesterday, and I did it today. And that's one thing you can always count on this show. I will always, the following day, do what I said I was going to do. So, while we're waiting for things to settle down, let's just take a little listen to remind us of where we are.
There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
Rock Flux.
Let's get this show on the road.
All right, so we're done that. It was only 11 minutes of mayhem, which in the grand scheme of things is not bad. I'm still not up to total par, right? For some reason, my CPU usage is shooting way up. I got to get out of this. I got to get off of YouTube. I mean, considering I have no idea. Am I up to 300 videos or something that I've done on here? Like I said, I guess telling my buddy Trey last night, they're not all good. And it's hard to watch. I guess if I put my voice by my microphone, you can't really tell that my lips are out of sync. But that, not all 250, 300 videos are great, keepers. But, there's about 125, I would say, in my calculations. And many of them are 2 hours long, or the length of a movie. Which are literally get out the bowl of popcorn, sit down, improve your sound system. I gotta apologize for the throat. It's 6:02 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here. So yeah, and I just came on and I'm winging this thing. I literally rolled out of bed a little bit after 5. Came down, had a fiber bar, a bowel movement. Things you don't talk about. Of course, I belch on the air too. I'm a human being. That's one thing about my show. It's real. It's real. It's in black and white. And I'm looking at a previous picture in which I'm talking about what you would have seen at point 13. And I'm seeing some fat-faced fuck. And prior to that, some beached fucking whale that was there. And I don't really look like that. Do I look like a beached fucking whale? Look at my body. It's a fucking perfect body. I don't usually do that, flash people. But I ain't no beach fucking whale. The fuck is wrong with the fucking YouTube, right? What's fucking wrong with them? It's like the finger thing too, Yeah. They'll shrink down the size of your fucking hands to make you look like you have a small dick or something, right? You know what I mean? You see the perspective of things, how whacked out it is? Depending on, there's a certain angle that they want to photograph you out, and they like stretch you out. I really didn't want to do a fucked up show like this today, but I guess it's starting.
No soup for you.
No soup for me, man. And that pissed YouTube off. Error, YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain a thing. Guess what? It's 30 frames per second, and kilobytes per second are 2679. That's fucking half the average person's upload speed, right? You know, so screw you. Stream health. Fucking nuts, man. It's fucking nuts. Anyway, it was worth the walk yesterday to go down and get the Dr. Pepper. You know, out of curiosity, I don't see any way anything on. Let me do something here. So I forgot to put up my new title card in the panic. I'll list this under philosophy, and this stream contains paid promotions. Select language, titles English, recording date is today, July 1st, standard license, show viewers, allow embedding. There's nowhere on here they're allowing me to like create chat or to have comments. They've deprived me of that. Add stream marker, create highlight video, share. You know? I'll tell you, man. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
Really funny. Really funny. What do you mean I'm funny? It's funny,
man.
It's a good story. It's funny. You're a funny guy.
Yeah, you know it, man. And of course, our favorite little sidekick.
Okay.
She thinks everything's silly. That's 20 ounces down, but now that I can disconnect, I can drink all the caffeine, control whatever I want to. You know, every day practically, or at least every week, I've made improvements on this program technologically, you know, that have gone beyond, you know, science as we know it today. What we're going to talk about today is not necessarily Johnny Cash. Maybe I'll sing that song again. I still didn't practice the chorus properly, but I listened to it. I read a lot of books. Guitar black and white. Let me I'm going to browse and show you the title card here. Because I was late putting it up. The Secret History of Earth, the morning show. And this is one of those, you know, NASA, NOAA, you know, satellite pictures of the Earth. You know, this is paid for with our taxpayer dollars, so it's not like I just stole an image off of the internet the way people do it. What do I mean by the secret history of Earth, right? That's what we want to talk about today. Not the usual things like, you know, that we're all just a bunch of cattle to these people who date back to Samaria and earlier, who just feed off of loosh, you know, and who basically are this international crime syndicate that's running the world, that probably David Icke was right about. Hey, look, Flash, my body. I know, it's crazy, man, but you know, it's like, I don't even give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. You know, it's a morning show. It's my morning show. It's, in my mind, it's the 1950s. You got the AM radio, a Pabst Blue Ribbon. There's my NASA hat. All right? There's my hula girl. There's tubes on top of that old AM radio. There's a calculator on the desk, and you can hardly see it, but over by the guitar here, which we'll get out earlier, behind that is a classic telephone. right? And if we don't look like a beached whale when we take a side pick here, man, is the delay on this really behind, I'll tell you. But I even got one of these, all right? But it's not what you think it is. Look what's on the other end of it. So you put that in your smartphone, and you can talk like a normal person and not get radiation. Isn't that cool? Yeah. It's pretty cool. And I was showing people yesterday at one point, if I can get this negotiated properly. You see the condensation, the sweating on there, and how I always, like I run out of ice cubes. I used to bring an extra ice cube tray out, but that would melt too. Well, I have the AC on. This place is like cold. It's starting to get cold here now. My CPU usage now, because you know, you chill a CPU, right, is down to like 6%. But that is caused by, and if I have it, I haven't done this in a while, but it's time I do this again to demonstrate how we're being screwed over. Of the battery, okay. You see that flashing red light? That means this is electromagnetic radiation tester, and when the red light is on, it means harmful electromagnetic radiation. Okay, now watch. Those who are regular viewers have seen this before. It stopped. You know why? Because over in that direction, it's just a futon and a wall. Here is the computer. Harmful radiation. Watch. I point it over to this area here. Well, of course, I've got a microphone there. Let me just get at this. There, it stopped. Wait. See, I have all this electronic equipment hooked up now that there we go. That's the there's a window over there. Okay? But it's clouded with all these new, I have 2 different microphones now because I was, and those one microphone has a preamp, so I guess that's giving off radiation. So the reason my ice is melting, we'll put that scientific device over on that side with the future stuff, because everything in the back here is from the 1950s, save the old, or whatever, the original Mac from 1984, 1985, when I bought it for $2,000. That thing cost back then. And literally, you had to put a disc, diskette in it, right? It had no internal memory. The first ones, you used to just keep putting these floppy disks in and out, right? I'm not that type of guy. I just do it to fuck with you and fuck with people. And something for the gay viewers, give them, give them a little thrill. But anyway, here's the deal. I can get into this thing 24 minutes into the show, and depending on where your head's at, I'm just drinking caffeine, carbonated caffeine, but you may want to get yourself prepared for this, and if you don't like what I say,
go ahead and shoot. You'll be doing me a favor.
Otherwise.
Good morning.
So, do you want the weather? Do you want the weather? All right. I'm going to give you the weekend weather because because it's 4th of July weekend coming up, and a lot of people are probably interested in this sort of thing. Let me move this up into sight and see if it doesn't get me out of sync. It's currently 68 degrees in my neck of the woods, and I'm located in the mid-Atlantic states, just kind of east of the Ohio Valley and along the northern Appalachian range. The northern Appalachians come through here. All right. I'm basically almost in a valley surrounded by mountains. If you go in my like upper attic, which has a view, incredible view, but small windows, you know, too bad. If I would have built this house, I would have had like giant windows. But you can see you're surrounded by mountains. In the upcoming flooding possibilities, if Lake Erie or one of the Great Lakes ever would dump down here, and this place would become a lake that would be like, you know, I don't know, 800 feet deep or something like that, 1,000 feet deep. Anyway, there's a 100% chance of a thunderstorm today here. The high is going to be 72 degrees, 57 on the overnight. Friday is going to be partly sunny or partly cloudy, depending on whether you're a glass half full, half empty type of guy or gal. 20% chance of, you know, maybe something happening from the sky. Cloudburst. Doubt it will. 68 degrees is the high on Friday. 55 is the low. That is a nice day. All right, especially if the sun comes out. Friday is looking nice, which will be a good travel day for people going on those vacations where they're going to max out their credit cards, you know, which I think is stupid. Yes. Pardon me for that. Saturday, 40% chance of rain. Probably you will get rain in a lot of parts in the mid-Atlantic area. 72 degrees for the high, 57 for the low. Sunday is another one of those half empty, half full type of days. 79, we're starting to creep up. It'll probably be 80 degrees if the sun pops its head out. 63 for the overnight, though, which means you'll get some decent sleep. And Monday, which is July 4th, you know, these people got to set up their fireworks. Bang, bang, bang. Well, I never liked fireworks since I was a kid. I thought it was the stupidest, craziest, dumbest thing in the world. And a rocket's red glare. You know, War of 1812. I'm going to get into that, and then we're going to get out of this. 10% chance of anything happening. It's going to get back up into the 86. So it's going to get warm again. So that was your
Weekend weather.
All right, you get everything done. Now back to, so July 4th weekend's coming up, so I guess everybody's got their plans and the holiday on their mind. Now, this is not going to be the go over the best with just about with everyone, but yeah. I had a few beers yesterday. I was only able to drink like 2 or 3 beers. I had one of those Polish beers that I still had left that a friend of mine sent me. Let's see. I guess there's no reason for me to keep the picture of Johnny Cash here. So let me just show you the Polish beer I drank yesterday. You're saying, why do you keep calling it Polish beer? Because it's the #1 beer in Poland, that's why. Here's a picture of it from my bar yesterday afternoon. Of course it comes in sideways. Of course it comes in sideways. Well, there it is sideways. Alright. I'm not playing games. I got no luck with... I'll tell you. You know? It's not... you know. They're out to get me, man. Alright. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I actually know how to defeat this. You know, I'm so used to things screwing up on me, like these computers being primitive devices, that, watch, I even know how now to fix it. Anyway, so yeah, yesterday I had one of them. And it's a pretty good beer, 5.6%. You could actually read it if you're watching this on a TV. 5.6% alcohol by volume, 330 milliliters. U.S. 11.2 fluid ounces. You notice they've been doing that a lot with even soft drinks now. It's no longer like 12 ounces. You know, you're getting at 11, you know, type of thing. You know, just take a little bit out, raise the price, and lower the volume, right? Cereal boxes, raise the price, make them a little thinner, or keep the price the same, but just take a little bit of that stuff out. Anyway, I did that, but I was real tired because I moved an air conditioner yesterday. I had an air conditioner in my front room, and I moved it into the hallway, which is closer to my back room, but I couldn't get it into my bedroom because my bedroom's not wired properly. So that's that. And yes, I will get a floor fan to push it in from the hallway in. Now, where was I? Apart from flashing myself, you know.
Attention, people of Earth, I have an important announcement to make.
Well, I don't know how important it is, but I'll tell you.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
That's for sure. So, we've talked about this in previous episodes. And the idea is that we have no idea, you know, as Graham Hancock says, we're a society with amnesia. And there's some clown who wrote a couple books who stole that line from Graham Hancock. But titles, as you may or may not know, titles are not copyrightable. So I could write a book tomorrow called Gone with the Wind. And as long as it's not about, you know, some Civil War type story, it's about, you know, just, you know, somebody losing their mind, being gone with the wind like me. They can't do anything about it, okay? But Graham Hancock was the first one, as far as I'm concerned, who came up and said we're a people with amnesia. We're a civilization with amnesia. And that's a very important thing. And it's just like my shirt that I have out there that I sell on TonyCaravanLive.com. You can find links there. That says, you don't know what you don't know. And, you know, sometimes the idea up here of everything you know is wrong, which you can basically grasp. And, of course, down here a little bit further over on the other side of the guitar, great solar stuff. You could barely see it. That site is where I have all these things that you could charge with the sun, or you can charge, you know, with your car. You could charge, you know, by plugging it into the wall so it's ready in case of a power down outlet or something or whatever. And I'll tell you, my on-air light right now has been consistently for maybe 100 episodes consecutively, has been running off of, you could hardly see it, but behind the guitar there's this thing you see if my thumb is just like kind of moving back and forth. There's kind of this boxy thing. That's called the Jackery. We sell those on Great Solar Stuff. When I say we, I mean me. I just get a commission if you buy it. I don't own a company or anything. I own Great Solar Stuff is mine, but whatever. But do you know that it hasn't even gone down 1% running that LED that I have in this on-air light? And I have a TV that we used to use a back monitor before I was able to like plop up, you know, these kinds of images. And I have no use for that anymore. In fact, I got to figure out something else to do with it. Henry Kissinger's here. I hope that you are all useless eaters. Now, this is such a broad topic, and there's so many people involved in it, And it's the history, it's basically the history of the world. And that's a car going down a residential neighborhood, a truck that's a 25 mile an hour speed zone. And it's like an 18-wheeler just like speeding past my house. And nobody gives a shit, right? Cops never, I've lived here for, I don't know, 6 years or something, I forget. 5 or 6 years. And I've yet to hear a siren go off or anybody get a ticket, But I'm sure if I got out there and did something, they'd write you up. It's a wacky world we live in. And they destroyed the street, and they're destroying. I constantly have to repair the concrete, my concrete steps, and the concrete around my foundation. And luckily, I know how. I was trained by a guy, excuse me, who used to build those giant chimneys you'd see on the smokestack industry, kind of concept. The chimneys that you could hardly see the top of. Well, a guy who used to do that, real mason. And he was stuck in a wheelchair towards the end of his life. This is many, many years ago. And I was living, this is down at the seashore, and I was living in basically his attic, which they had converted into a, kind of a rental unit. Because when you lived down at the shore in the old days, if you had any kind of space, you'd throw in a bath, makeshift bathroom, a one room, and you'd rent it out because, tourists. People didn't care what it was. You spent most of your time on the beach, boardwalk, or in the bars, right? The place you rented was just a place to crash. That's why I laugh when these people go to these 4 or 5 star, hotels and stuff at these resorts. I'm like, are you on vacation, to visit this place and take in all the sights, the sounds, and all the the various amusements and entertainment? Or are you there to sit there, with your ungrateful wife saying, sorry women, like, oh, look at the drapes, look at this, or here's the TV, I'm gonna lay in bed and watch TV in this comfortable place, and I get the mint, my sheets folded down and a mint on it. It's like, come on, man. Right? This is a beret. I am a beat poet and an author. Okay? I do not work here.
1 cheeseburger, 1 Pepsi, 1 cheap. Cheeseburger. Pepsi, cheap. What do you want?
I have a cheeseburger and a small Coke.
So, anyway, it's a crazy story. And before I start,
hey, it's me. How you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. I'm glad.
It's me. How you doing, man?
You're like caught in a loop, buddy. I'm doing okay. I'm trying to tell a story. So you got to think of this thing. This is a big story. See, the hands have shrunk suddenly. It's weird. Paranoia. So there's my Andy Warhol. And with July 4th coming up, there's a little bit of patriotism there to the left. So people are getting ready for their July 4th weekend. If it were me, it would be grilling in the backyard. Today's a rain day, so I guess I'm stuck in the house. At least I don't have to water the garden. And those of you who do garden, have you noticed, the garden just like jumps up, like bam, after a good, all day rain. So I'm looking forward to that. One person explained it to me is that, the Earth's atmosphere is basically mostly nitrogen. The average person doesn't realize that. It's like the CO2 scam. you know, there's only 0.004% CO2 in the atmosphere, right? And oxygen is like about 20% or less. And everything, you know, and then you've got these other, all kinds of little things, you know, 1% of this, 2% of that. But the rest of it's all nitrogen. So this is like a nitrogen atmosphere planet, right? And plants like nitrogen. And so when you get a rain, an all-day rain, what's happening is it's pushing that nitrogen into the soil. So you're not just getting that clean, you know, cloud atmosphere distilled rain, you know, unless you've got some kind of, you know, acid rain thing going on. But you're getting fertilizer. So the plants are getting this liquid nitrogen fertilizer and water, and it's seeping down into the ground and all that. And the next time the sun comes out, boom, man, those things jump a couple inches. I'm expecting to get some, well, I already have tomatoes on my tomato plants, but I'm expecting to probably, excuse me, I can't talk today because it's still 6:30 a.m. But yeah, I'm expecting to get tomatoes, red tomatoes, you know. This is a beret. All right, so enough of that. But it's part of the whole story, because the planet is, first of all, let's look at the Earth. All right. The Earth is a planet of trees and plants, right? Flora, for lack of a better word, okay? You know, flora and fauna, as in we're fauna, and everything that grows is flora. And there's this network, you know, of fungi that seem to connect, and it's like their neural network of communications. And they may have other things that we've yet to discover, other ways of communicating. But ultimately, even with catastrophes, the planet survives and it regrows. I've learned this, you know, even myself in a very small way, and this is on topic but off topic, just to get moving. But I've like grown tomato plants in my porch in the wintertime. In other words, December, January, in a climate that has supposed to have 4 seasons, but we really get about 7 months now of winter. The Earth is cooling. It's not. There's no global warming. I mean, that was a fraud for a guy, you know, a fraud created for multiple purposes. Let's not even get into it. But anyway, they got out of control. And it just became this like viney, crazy thing. I actually got a few tomatoes that grew there, and I ate them, and they tasted pretty good. But it was just so out of control. It was just like this growth, because I should have been clipping and trimming and doing all this stuff. But, you know, one thing led to another. Life got in the way, and it just became, you know, a viney mess. So I tried to get these things out of there. And, you know, and as I was, they were in planters, and some of them were in fairly big planters, you know. But pulling them through, it's a tight fit through like this, it's a tiny porch, and it has a door on it, and it's like the door doesn't open the whole way, and things were, the stems were bending, and things were falling off, and it was a mess. The plants were just being destroyed, you know, hacked by just, you know, getting them out of that space. In fact, actually two particular plants that were in smaller pots literally had no leaves on them. All that was left was like a little stem about this big on them. But I put them in this little mini greenhouse that I call the TARDIS in the backyard. And the ones that still had things, you know, various viney things on them, even though they were bent and broken and stuff, I put on the ground in an area that gets sun. Now, make a long story short, in the greenhouse now, those things that literally just had stems on them have now have leaves and are growing, right, from the roots. And the things that I laid on the ground that were half broken, well, some of them that were probably bent too much didn't, but I'm starting to see life grow, and these things are starting to stretch out. And last year, not this year, but last year I had planted, we had a late freeze. We get late freezes now all the time. That's why I'm trying to say this Green New Deal climate thing is such fantasy for people like me who actually are firsthand, and I show this all the time. You know, people that keep daily gardening planting records, all right? And listen to NOAA radio and, you know, and keep track of all this stuff. You know, talk to farmers, homesteaders, and stuff like that. All over the country, all over the world. Everybody's telling the same story. This Green New Deal and global warming and climate change is like some kind of political, social, you know, I don't know, money grab. I'm sorry for that. I don't hold back those things. I figured it'd be more damaging to my esophageal passages, all right, and cause me an upset stomach. I'm out of Tums or out of Rolaids, so I have to do that. And I'm a human being, so accept it. Now listen to this story, please. So anyway, last year we had a late freeze in May. And I had already put out my tomato plants. Okay? And they were tomato plants that I had grown from seed indoors. And they were doing very, very well. They were quite high, the stems were thick. They had a good prospects. So I put them in the ground. And of course we got the frost. I did my best to put burlap over them and things like that. But, you know, tomato plants are sensitive. And, you know, it was a frost. And it was you know, it didn't really get warm. It wasn't like a one-night thing and then it got suddenly nice. It was you know, it's a typical thing, you know. It's like we get seven months of winter, 1 month of spring, 1 month of fall, and 3 months, if we're lucky, of summer. You know, that's basically it. Tally that up, that's 12 months. Now, granted, it's not, the 1 month of spring isn't consecutive. You know, you might get a hot day in March, and then they're all out there. See, climate change is hot. Or you know, this week we had some 90-degree weather. And I noticed, I scanned in YouTube, and was all making this out to be this is the worst thing in the world. And then I turn on the NOAA weather radio.
Highs in the mid-80s. Tuesday night, mostly clear. Lows in the lower 60s. Wednesday, mostly sunny with a chance of showers and thunderstorms. Highs in the lower 80s.
And what happens is on here, you know, you can listen to this, listen to it for a while, you know, and they'll tell you about the records, right? And you'll find out that most of the highs, you know, the high temperatures, I said this in a show a couple of days ago, specifically, that the high temperatures were in the 40s or 1950s, you know, or even the late 1880s during the Industrial Revolution, the smokestack when we were putting, you know, spewing all this coal and everything into the atmosphere when you couldn't even see in the cities. New York City was like a fog, right? You know. But anyway, make a long story short again. So these plants were totally destroyed. So I decided that rather than just pull them completely out of the ground And I really didn't have any reason to do this. I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to trim everything, just take all this, frost burnt stuff off it. And I literally almost trimmed them down to the stem, right? And I left them there because it was a little track of in my garden. And I went to a nursery then, because I grow tomatoes every year, and I wanted tomato plants, and I was very disappointed. And I wasn't sure that these things were going to survive, but I left them there. But I had room, to the left of them. And I went to a nursery, and I bought like a 6-pack of, seedlings that they had grown in the nursery of tomatoes. And so I planted those in another spot. Well, lo and behold, as they say, these roots that I had grown indoors in these potted plants that I had put in the ground, those plants came back to life in a couple of weeks once the warm weather hit and the rains and watered. I did some fertilizing and things like that. And I actually got tomatoes from those plants that were frozen. And what I'm trying to get at is that plants and the earth, survives. It's an ecosystem. It's their world, right? Like I always say, shut up, kid, it ain't your planet, right? To that, that girl or woman masquerading as a girl. This is a beret. Shut up, kid, it ain't even your planet. So we just exist on this planet, and whether you want to think of us as placed here in the Garden of Eden or something like that, that's fine. Or you want to look back at all the old religions, right, passed down from, generation to generation through millennia. The idea is that doesn't really matter, and it's getting cold in here. So I'm going to go and I'll shut off the air conditioner, which is just over there, and I have this new thing so I can just disconnect. See? I almost got a little dizzy doing that. I don't know why. Hopefully. It's either that or the caffeine. I probably should have gotten some ice cubes while I was at it, or ate some more food. Ah, that's better. That noise was in my, I don't know if you were hearing it, but in my headphones, the sound. This particular microphone has, is pulling in. It's not a directional microphone. It's omnidirectional. So, and on the side, it's like deeper, it's weird. The cat has left, so I may bring the guitar out at some point soon. So you got this planet. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was like, it was a head trip. It was a head trip. It's hard to explain, but it was a head trip, so.
Here's what's happening.
I wish I had the chat on so people could tell me if that's loud. That sounds super loud in my head, but I don't know. In any event, so you've got this ecosystem, this planet, and it exists, and it has existed for estimates 4.5 billion years, something like that. And cataclysms have come and gone, and civilizations have come and gone. Now, modern anthropologists, they like to say, humans are so many hundreds of thousands, modern humans, and, they assign these, Copper Age, Stone Age, based on metals and tools and things that they found, things that have survived cataclysms. But what they don't really get into is this idea that when everything ultimately that is created by man, so to speak, disintegrates. It disintegrates. I mean, unless it's somehow encased in rock, or some kind of fossilization process, which again is just the natural part, and elements of the planet itself. And there are, and have been many discoveries of things that have been found in rocks that are millions of years old, like a piece of a hammer or something, or weird things. I mean, there's the contested spark plug, that has been was found inside like a geode or something like that. There's all kinds of stories like that. They don't usually, come out, and if they do come out, they're always just brushed aside. It's like, well, that's some lame excuse. And what I found about, first of all, the evidence is overwhelming that that previous civilizations have risen to high levels over 12,000 years ago, 24,000 years ago, 36,000 years ago, all right, even 72,000 years ago, and maybe beyond that. And many people are starting to latch on to this due to the mounting evidence that there seems to be a recurring approximately 12,000 years, When you're talking about planets hurling through space at incredible speeds, right? However you want to see the universe as a kind of a clockwork designed thing, you're still going to have deviations, and over thousands and thousands of years, slight deviations, become bigger. It's like the moon. The moon is, I forget what it is exactly, but the moon is moving away from the Earth, like a half inch every so often, something ridiculous, a ridiculously small amount. But when you go back millions of years, the moon was closer and much bigger in the sky, right? But not 10 years ago, and not centuries ago, and not even necessarily thousands of years ago, but tens of thousands or 1 million years ago, you see. So these small incremental things don't allow us to have, a true picture, and to be able to precisely say such and such is going to happen at an exact time. All right, we can only calculate, and currently the belief is what seems to be in the archaeological record, the texts that we have found, and then we're constantly finding more and more texts from ancient civilizations and decoding these things, that there seems to be, and just the evidence of through things like ice cores, there's just so much evidence, mounting evidence, and so many people from diverse fields as well, that this 12,000 years seems to keep coming up, all right, as some sort of recurring catastrophe, Earth catastrophe. And that even ties into other, things that happen that people keep track of, such as like precession and things like that, which, you may or may not be familiar with, but you should be. And so I drank too much caffeine is part of the problem. And I get up too early. And I don't know if those energy bars I eat are exactly the best thing to be eaten for breakfast. So I had this, and I proposed this, I don't know, in an episode, I don't know when, several weeks ago. Like I say, I really need an assistant, to tell you the truth, to just go through the vast amount of these broadcasts and index them. And if I were to do it myself, it would literally take me, like a year or something. I mean, many of these broadcasts, lately I've tried to cut them a little bit short, like an hour and a half or so. But I mean, there was a stretch there where I was pretty much 2 hours. And so to go through that, and sometimes these nuggets, as I call them, of information that just come out, or I might get on a tangent, but then that tangent is, leads into something that I had read or something I was aware of, and then I got into it in detail. But it occurs at some point, within this 2 hour period, and it may only be a 10-minute or 5-minute little thing, but it's like, whoa, that was interesting. And I'm working on a book for this year, which I want to basically be kind of all-inclusive and kind of the end of this series of books I've done. And, but I just don't feel like spending the entire year working on that book. So, it's like you have so much time during the day, but I don't make any money on this thing. In fact, like I said, it costs me more money than it does. It just costs me money. It doesn't cost me more money. It just costs me money to do this. I don't earn anything. No one seems, not even a single person bought a mug. The radiation is cooking my soft drink because it's too close to it, right? First-hand experience. So what I was proposing was that like 36,000 years ago, perhaps, and we could only postulate these things, right? It's not even a theory, it's possibly a hypothesis, but it's, you just base this on information that's out there, and there are not enough people that are coordinating this information, and there's still vast amounts of information, like stuff in the Vatican archives, stuff in private collections and the back rooms of museums in Europe, and even down in the Smithsonian in Washington. So many things that are just hidden from the public eye. So, for us to put together the full puzzle, the big picture of, of civilization and previous civilizations is impossible. So many great minds have spent many, many years trying to work and put together the pieces of these puzzles. And fortunately, they have found over the years alternative tablets, scrolls, information, that has, given us a glimpse into some of these things that have been previously hidden from us. And that's kind of where we stand. And what it's looking like right now is that the 12,000 year thing, that's pretty much like agreed upon. All right. The idea of cataclysms, it's like the flood story. There are so many similar flood stories that it can no longer be thought of as some kind of biblical myth, because it just appears in every corner of the earth. There's stories of this great flood, right? So it's beyond, you can't, it's beyond any kind of questioning. The fact is, look, there was a flood. And then as we look at the fact that the ocean levels have risen, certain levels over the past 12, in like the year between 10,600 and 12,000 years ago, cities, they found cities, off the coast of like India, these what were thought to be mythical cities. They found that they're there. The fact that even today, most civilizations, societies, we tend to live on the coastlines, right? It's the highest concentration of people. That the idea that if there was an ocean rise that took out New York, Philadelphia, DC, Miami, right? London, Paris, Hong Kong. You see what I'm saying? That and it's immerse them in water. And that's and that's just how it is. It's just that we have, and part of this whole idea that I've been bringing up is that I see things in a non-machine, metallic, artificial way, so that this culture, this civilization that we've grown since the last catastrophe, has been a culture that primarily, particularly I guess in the last, I don't know, maybe 3,000 to 4,000 years. You got that Antikytherian device, it's a couple thousand years old or whatever. But I mean, we decided to go the route of machinery, and like tools, right? Because even a computer itself is just a tool. The people that get obsessed with these things and they become the center of their life, right? It's like, to a guy like me, it's just a tool. That's all, nothing more, right? I use it to, to receive a call, make a call, and maybe if I were somewhere else, I would if I were waiting for an email or something weird like that, to check it. And there are certain apps, so to speak, that are convenient, that from a tool standpoint. Like if I want to order something, I can order a delivery of some kind of thing. But it's just a tool, Many people have made these the center of their life, though they didn't even exist a dozen years or so ago. These apps and these things, not in the mainstream, not the way they're being used right now. But that's what our society has. This is the pinnacle of our current civilization, is the smartphone, algorithms, AI, computer, the cloud, right? Equipment, machinery, everything along those lines. And again, like I said, you can't accuse me of being some Luddite type of person, because just look what I'm doing. I embrace the technology. I'm using the technology to communicate with you, right? I have all of this technology, right? Even like I said, in the back here, I jumped on the Mac the moment it came out. And before that, I was working with I had the Commodore computer, but I was also working in graphics on something called a CompuGraphic as early as the early 80s. So, I've always embraced, this is the civilization we live in, all right? This is the age, the era of the machine. This is just how you have to accept it. Now, you can't deny that. These people, it's like the people who go out and homestead and they build themselves a composting toilet or an outhouse. And I look at that and I think, why would you do such a ridiculous thing? Right? You could capture rainwater very easily. You could build yourself a septic tank, and you can have a flushing toilet, even if you're out in the wilderness, right? But, so it's like those are the extremists, that's the Luddite, right? Put some solar panels on your house, collect rainwater, get one of those Berkey filters that will basically clean anything out of water, right? Stock up on a couple extra filters, put in a septic tank, and live out, if you want to get away from people or live out of the way, and just live a normal life, but live a life where you can have, whatever. Live in the world that it is, that exists today. All right, well, imagine a civilization that didn't go that route, right? And like I was saying last night in my conversation, that, we know that, we've had, the CIA has released documents that they've done remote viewing, used remote viewing during the Cold War and had success with it. These documents have been declassified. There have been all kinds of experiments and even things like psychokinesis, ESP. All of these things are no longer like woo-woo, right? You can read about it. There's research done on it, experiments like in the scientific way, experiments that have been reproduced in different parts of the world by different scientists, so that, in other words, it has been proven, as much as you can say anything is proven. And so imagine a culture, a civilization, 24,000 years ago, 36,000 years ago, that used the bioelectric human brain. This is a beret. The bioelectric human brain, instead of trying to create artificial intelligence or artificial memory, right? Virtual, reality, augmented reality. See, they call it reality, but it's like virtual, artificial, augmented. Well, what if they just lived in reality, right? consciousness, reality, and utilize the five senses, which may be even the sixth sense, right? And that was their civilization was based upon that. So they didn't need to rely on a thing, right? Instead, they just did, right? A movie, could be a dream. One could just get into some sort of, I hate to use the word meditation, but I mean, one could just sit back, in a comfortable, quiet space and watch a movie in their mind and be a player in that, right? Things can be, we know that we see from the archaeological record and ruins and things of that nature that previous civilizations lived in comfort. Even within our own 12,000 year cycle here, we could go back to Rome and look at the, buried city of Pompeii and see modern style houses, multi-level, multi-story houses, stairwells, windows, shopping centers, right? Baths, running water, toilets, right? And as I've said before, yet in the 20th century, early part of the 20th century here in the United States, people were using outhouses, much like these guys who are going out, these homesteaders or these guys going out in the woods and thinking they're, living off the grid. And the Romans 2,000 years ago, had running water. In fact, they were a water culture, if you really think about it, because they had mastered the use of water so much with their aqueduct systems and this constant flow of water that everything, you look and you see so many fountains and so many, the exploiting of the use of water in every way, because that was their thing. They were a water culture, if you think about it, right? Right? All these little statues with water coming out of them, and the baths, the Roman baths. I mean, you could still go to Bath, England, right? I mean, these things are incredible when you see, what you could call technology, the technology that was done. But it was just humans living in comfort so that they could have that, what I call the sensual experience, the soul experience, or just the consciousness, not the brain, not the biological brain experience, okay? These are people walking around, they have a biological brain, they're like robots, all right? Yeah, you've got eyes, ears, and you're able to, the brain, the basic biological brain allows you motor functions, and you can do this, do that, and you can even speak, and you can be taught in school systems memorization and being, conditioned, indoctrinated, right, to act and perform a certain way. But the idea that there's this other thing, it's called the hard problem of consciousness, which I talk about in my book here, Codex, all right? And I did a lot of research in AI to do that. And so you can, and that's when I discovered that AI was just, kind of like overblown and just kind of fantasy. And that's when I started to lose respect for guys like Elon Musk, who's a very intelligent engineer and has has produced some incredible equipment, machinery, right? Rockets and cars and things for this mechanized culture, civilization. But that when it comes to the concepts of understanding the capability of consciousness, and that hard problem of consciousness, the idea of the duality of man, the idea that there is this consciousness that's above and outside of the physical bioelectric brain, the thing religions call soul, and that life ultimately is this soul experience, right? And so, these other cultures that decided that they didn't need to get fixated on having external machines to do their work, to divert them away from this full immersion into reality instead of a virtual reality or an artificial intelligence, right? Or an augmented reality. And this is never really talked about. And this is pretty far ancillary to the idea of catastrophism, the idea of the 12,000-year cycle where the sun goes through this somewhat micronova expelling this shell and our diminishing magnetic field that can't handle it, and catastrophe, right? So my idea is that there was, but it all ties together, and I'll try to tie it together before the show ends, which will be a little shortly. So imagine a culture, say 36,000 years ago, or prior to that, just prior to the cataclysm, that was aware of this, just like we're becoming aware of this. Now, when I say we, unfortunately, it's not the mainstream. This stuff just doesn't seem to be being talked about in any public forums, put it that way. It's being talked about in scientific papers. It's being argued about among great minds of our day. There's, evidence piling up, that this is a reality, but it's still hidden. People are into sensational things. They're caught up in smartphones and apps and entertainment and sporting events, or these this thing that's been the unspeakable thing that's been like going on now for the past year and a half or more, right? That's been center of attention, everyone's focus, the fear, fear mongering. And it's like, what are you more afraid of, right? That unspeakable thing that, no one seems to want to give us a clear answer on, or the idea that, this is the end of the world as you know it, right? This may be the end of the world as you know it. And it could happen in 10 years or 20 years, and that's pretty much the time frame they're talking about now. Step one, the first part of this thing, due to our diminishing magnetic field and things that are happening with the sun, is that there's a major possibility that in the coming years the grid's just going to go down. We're going to lose power. And everything, and in a society that's completely dependent upon electricity and the grid, and and people who just, these devices are like appendages. They can't be without them. They have withdrawal symptoms, right? Like a drug addict if they're removed from it. Well, imagine that just no longer existing. And that's kind of phase one. And then phase two would be the cataclysm, which would be the near extinction event, possibly, or at least a pretty serious major global catastrophe. All right. And so, that's amazing. And so the idea is, well, we can't scare people, or whatever. There'll be widespread panic and blah, blah, blah. But the idea of hiding anything from the people, right? What gives one class, as they consider themselves, like the ruling class, the political class or something, what gives them the right to make the decision that we can't know a thing? Right? It's like censorship on social media and even and all media. It's like, what why are they holding back information from us? They don't tell us the truth, and eventually it comes out. It's just like the UFO phenomenon thing. They're like slightly coming out. They're dancing around this disclosure stuff, but they're basically admitting it. But they're trying to sugarcoat it and, well, it's yeah. But the point is, what they've come out, basically the biggest story, one of the biggest stories, was that they've been lying to us all along. And people are like, well, like as if that's no big deal. And there's so many of these things that come out like that. And everyone is so preoccupied with watching some sitcom or some social issue or some, cult of personality, right? Save America, Build Back Better, Great Reset, whatever. That they're just totally diverted from, things that should be the most important things in their life are like these nothings, right? Oh, okay. Yeah, I heard about that, right? I don't know if I believe it or not. It's like the casualness, the way people deal with these things. So I'm not trying to fearmonger, because, I'm like the old Roosevelt thing.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
It's like, what good is fear? It serves no purpose, being afraid of something. I always tell people, it's like even worrying. What's the use in worrying? If there's something that you got, that's troubling you, or something that you have to deal with, constantly worrying about it in advance of the thing is a waste of time. Worry about it the moment, worry about it 10 minutes before the thing happens, you know what I mean? But I have this belief that there more than likely was a previous civilization that rose much higher than we have as a society, as a civilization, or whatever you want to call it. And that they just used their minds. And they lived in comfort. They were a higher culture. They knew more. They were maybe more in tune with this universe, this gigantic, ginormous thing. Which is another thing, See, we don't see the stars. I had that line in one of the songs I wrote one time. Because even in the smaller cities, you don't see the stars. So people aren't in touch. The average person. Now, people live out in the, in the country, and you live in certain areas. But I mean, even where I am, where it's towards the outskirts of town, there's still some street lights and certain lights and things like that. People have lights in the back of their... My neighbor has some spotlight in the back of their building they leave on because of paranoid of crime or something. I don't know what. It's like nobody's gonna, there's nothing there for them to rob. Nobody cares about your backyard. You know, but there's always a light on somewhere. And the more lights there are, the less ability you have is to see the stars. And when you can't see the stars, you don't see yourself in perspective. Right? You know, that we're just this little tiny dot, minuscule, nothing. You know, I mean, even compared to the galaxy, compared to even other planets in our solar system, I mean, we're tiny, you know. I forget how many Earths can fit in the sun, you know. But I mean, compared to the galaxies and then the universe, the known universe, and if there are indeed multi-universes, you know, who knows? And then the concepts, the philosophical concepts of like these dreams within a dream, and these stories of these so-called gods, or that, you know, there's just so much information that, you know, children from an early age are conditioned to not go there and think about it, even think about it. And that's really sad, because in other words, the vast majority of people living on this planet have no idea of their place within the universe, or what life is even possibly about, right? And they're further conditioned, indoctrinated, propagandized, programmed, really, to not even go there. And then when things like science fiction come out, like, you know, you see these science fiction shows. Like I was watching this Star Trek Discovery, even, you know, just, you know, I binge watch some of these shows. You got to do something to pass the time, you know. And it's like you look at it and it's unrealistic. And I love science fiction. I've loved it since I was a kid. I used to read science fiction books when I was, you know, that was my thing. At nighttime in my room, you know. Arthur C. Clarke and, you know, Ray Bradbury and, you know, all the bigger names in science fiction. You know, that was very enjoyable to me. And it took me into a place. That was, you know, I liked it. I still like it. And like I say, I watch these things. But now I watch them, and I sometimes I look at this stuff and I go, you know, it's just not realistic. You know, it's like Alan Watts said, we're already out in space. We're way out in space. You know, what is it? The Earth's being dragged along by the sun that's traveling at 450,000 miles per second, or an hour, or whatever it is. Ridiculous speed still. You know. And so we're on this, the Earth is a spaceship, so to speak. The cat's gone. I wanted to do this. I want to see if I destroyed this, if by messing with the microphone, if I could still get this thing going here. I'm just going to try this. It's out of tune. Sorry about that. I'm not going to tune it, though. I just wanted to do this. I hurt myself today to see if I still feel. I focus on the pain, the only thing that's real. I don't know, just wanted to do that. Kind of screwed it up. But nonetheless, I like to throw a little guitar into something every show. But you know, people had musical instruments and music, you know, before technology. You know, stringed instruments, horns, flutes, you know, things like that. You know, if you even think, like I say, you think about even within our 12,000 year cycle, so to speak, that if you go back prior to, you know, technology, you know, the machine, the computer, all this stuff, and you think about like the symphony orchestra, you know, and these amphitheaters, even going back to the Greeks, you know, where they had these orators that would, you know, they would build this structure that was acoustically perfect, so that you know, an individual could stand at a certain point and talk, and people could sit in these concrete bleachers basically. But for all we know, they had padded seats and stuff like that too, you know. It's a couple thousand years ago, you know, that stuff doesn't last, right? And they just, so they didn't need to create loudspeakers, you know, mixing boards, soundboards, microphones. You know, they just did it. And it's like these symphony halls and things like that. You know, the idea of using the human brain to understand acoustics and sound, and for two purposes. One, using the brain to calculate and figure this stuff out, and then creating, you know, something that was pleasing to our ears, you know, and would take us to a place, right? Because music is so interesting and integral to our lives, and mysterious, right? Music is mysterious. You know, now we just have like a lot of this beat stuff, boom, 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 boom. You know, but it's not as challenging to, you know, to the bioelectric brain, and, you know, to the uplifting of the spirit. It's more bioelectric robotics, right? It's like a drug. It's a feel-good thing. You know, dopamine hit type of thing. As opposed to realizing that who knows what you could do if you were focused, truly focused, and not dealing with artificial things, right? So you can imagine these high cultures that existed that had literally everything we have and more, you know. But yet they were still destroyed on the 12,000 year cycle, and it like repeated again. And who knows, you know, it's just, you know, then there's these theories of this soul traps, you know, this loosh, you know, we're like trapped on this planet destined to just repeat, you know, reincarnate or repeat over and over again the same thing. Who knows? Now, there's so many fascinating things. The idea of philosophy and thought. And you don't see people using their brains like that today. I mean, you do in certain institutions and philosophers and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, in general, these are the important things. I mean, life, existence, contemplation of, of what it's all about. The idea that we're so diverted as a civilization, again, just against that, to not think of it. And then when they do produce these thought-provoking movies or TV shows, there's elements in there that are, somewhat mind-blowing. But they put so much in, they're so technologically driven as well. So they're in spaceships. And then, of course, to keep with the, the military contractors and things like that, they have to be battleships and starships, and there's wars between, the Klingons or the Romulans and, the Federation. Or in Star Wars, there has to be the dark side. And so they take all these elements to maintain, so it provides for people this somewhat of a dream of a different, way of thinking reality. Excuse me. It's hard to talk at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the former United States. I scared somebody away with that. But, it's, that's where we stand. So my thing has always been, and I keep repeating this, that, knowing this, if this fascinates you and if you're interested in this, it's a great thing to know and to ponder and to find people to discuss this with. But that it's not likely that this civilization is ever going to embrace, that type of thinking. We're not a philosophical civilization. This is a mechanized, computerized, cloud-based app, smartphone, culture. And the culture's falling apart, because people don't know how to, they talk about fixing the infrastructure and things like that, but we don't have people who are studying trades, and understand how to do things. And so there are simply not enough people to keep up with the decay of, in the U.S., for example, the decay of the country. So as the sewer systems, water systems, electrical, grids, the cities themselves, all these elements, as they fall apart or, have problems, need repair, there's just simply not enough people that are trained in those areas anymore. And so society, in effect, is kind of imploding. I've often said to people that one of the most fascinating things about, like, the fall of various empires over the years is that it's not that they vanish, because that's what some people say. Well, they just vanished. It's like, no, they didn't vanish. It's like when the Roman Empire fell, you had Italy, right? And, and Rome reached, all the way up to England. And, people just became, absorbed into the society in England, or are the other, areas of conquest. And that's happening now. Western civilization is, is collapsing. And the U.S., I call it the former U.S. The idea of save America or build back better they're great slogans by ad agencies, but they're not realistic because you don't have the so-called manpower to do it. Right? People are sitting on college debt with degrees that aren't degrees in running an excavator or cranes, or bulldozers or giant, dump trucks, ukes, or whatever you want to call them, all this kind of stuff, even a skid steer, heavy equipment that's required to rebuild the infrastructure of a nation the size of the U.S., which is crumbling right before our eyes. We just don't have the manpower. We don't have enough people. There aren't even enough big contracting firms. I remember many, many years ago, I'm talking about 30 or more years ago, 35 perhaps. I remember something in Pennsylvania. They always call them DOT, Department of Transportation. And so in Pennsylvania, it was PennDOT. And I remember PennDOT had in a press release type of thing out that they had that their mission was an ongoing process of keeping the roads, drivable, and roads and bridges drivable. So in other words, by the time they made it from one end of the state to another, it was time to fix the other, the other part had decayed enough. Excuse me. So you take that on a countrywide thing, but we've neglected so much and we've expanded so much, over the past, say, 50 years, that we're way behind the 8 ball when it comes to that. And people are so distracted and just not concerned, people don't want to get, I know a guy who has a pizza shop can't find an employee. People just don't want to work, right? And the people who do get jobs, they make a lot of money, this is a good time if you're somebody who actually has a talent. You can really earn a lot of money if you have the motivation. Another thing lacking from society today, and I'm getting towards the end of this, is the entrepreneurial spirit. That there are so many businesses owned by people. I've encountered a lot of people who are like close to 80 years old who are still, showing up for their businesses, but there's nobody there to take them over. Nobody wants to come in and say, hey, I'll work out a deal. Let me take over this business. I'll pay you this, or we can set up this. Can you help me out, getting this thing? It's not happening. And so, we're watching collapse right before our eyes. And it just so happens it's interesting in a way that it's coinciding with a time when our magnetic field is weakening, when the sun is acting up, and it looks like we might be heading towards this, the end of this 12,000 year cycle. That all of this, all of these things are kind of coming together at this particular time. So it's, it's interesting. These, So, I don't know. I just something I wanted to babble about. It's very thought-provoking, and you could take it in a many different directions, and I didn't get into specifics because how could I in 2 hours, get into specifics? But it's a good overview of things that just most people aren't talking about. I could give you a few names like suspiciousobservers.org, You know, Randall Carlson, you know, the Diehold Foundation, David Vogt, VOGT, you know, people like that. You know, you can look into these various stories, you know, and you know, people are there's tons of people talking about these various things, and you know, you have to sift through it too. You know, you just, you know, sometimes you'll watch something on one of these channels, and you know, it's somebody makes a compelling argument against, you know, for or against something. But the idea is, like I always say, if you don't have firsthand experience, or you know, then, and don't just go and look for a confirmation from another source. Because issues like this, you need confirmation from a half dozen sources. You see? Find the similarities from 6 different people or papers or things like that. Because these are complex issues. And it's so easy for people, and especially in a time like in the internet world, where so many people just copy and paste something they've heard. And it's like television itself too. I mean, everything's a remake, you know, or redux as they call it, right? You know, I was looking at on this like Paramount network that I subscribed to because I wanted to watch this. Originally I wanted to watch that Star Trek Picard because I was an old fan of Star Trek, you know, I mean. And so now I got hooked into this. I'm a Trekkie, yeah. So, you know, but I watch and I noticed that on their list, you know, as you look and see all the other programs on there, that practically every program that was on Paramount owns CBS now, you know. All the major media companies have merged. There's only about 5 or 6 that own everything. So, you know, I got rid of my cable and satellite TV, you know, way back. So I don't watch it, but you know, I will occasionally subscribe to a service to watch a series, binge watch something. It's a contemporary thing. It's something we do. But I was looking to see what their, you know, offerings were, and they're all programs remade from the past. You know, there's nothing new. You know, it's like a remake of Twilight Zone, a remake of Star Trek, a remake of Magnum P.I., a remake of Hawaii Five-0, a remake. You know what I mean? Everything's a remake. And you got to wonder, when a society starts, you know, everything is there's nothing. The majority of things are remakes. It's not like there's nothing new. You know, every now and then there something comes out and you go, wow, that's neat. That's a neat idea. That's new. You know, that was brilliant, right? I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But generally speaking, society for the most part is just a bunch of remakes. You know? So we're a backward looking society. Like what, you know, even with all these social issues, everyone's looking backwards instead of looking forward. You know, and everyone's sensitive about something. You know, triggered or something. So, I don't know, and so in that kind of environment, how would you expect anyone to think of these like philosophical ideas of the nature of existence, you know, and grand cycles of catastrophe, and you know, and the alternative ways in which civilizations could have risen to high levels that were even more advanced than we are, and the concept that you could have a high civilization that relied more on, you know, itself, right? You know, its consciousness than it did some kind of thing that came along, you know, in a decade or so ago and somehow became the center of everyone's life. Just fascinating stuff. Well, anyway, that's kind of all I have to say about that today. And I got up early, but I mean, I slept long enough. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say other than
good morning.
Wow, that was loud in my ears. I don't know if it was loud in your ears, but have a good morning. And I'm going to be messing around. I'm going to try to see what this Adam Curry's podcasting thing is and see if I could do live podcasting over there or through, on a different platform. I'm all for it. So we'll just it's going to take me some time to figure that out. There's like so much to... the thing with technology is I've always been involved in technology, electronics, and all that kind of stuff, But I also garden in my backyard. I also have a house that, that I'm dealing with. And, and I like to read. I'm writing another book. I occasionally write songs. I have about 50 songs out there. So it's, to put the time into, a specific thing, it's hard to chop up your time. It's even with, that's why I don't even have time for people anymore, as much as I would like to. Part of me, wishes, but I would have more time for people, but I don't. It's like, and I'm retired basically. That's the other thing about it. I'm pretty much, I just stepped back and I'm just living life. So anyway, thanks for watching. Visit my site, TonyCaravanLive.com. It's not much. It's just on a Google site type of setup. But it's got all the basics there. So there's links to my book. You can listen to some of my music and go further with that. This is the Rock Flux channel on YouTube. And you could get a shirt. You could see my Great Solar Stuff site and different things like that. And I highly recommend you do it. Check it out, Support the channel, as they say. Otherwise, if you're having an early 4th of July weekend, have fun. Don't waste your money, though, Don't over push the credit cards to the limit just for the sake of, I don't know, for waste. Enjoy nature, enjoy what's out there, enjoy life, enjoy the people you're with. That should be the focus, not whether or not you got folded down bed sheet and a chocolate.